Hello and welcome, everyone. Super excited about the conversation we're moving into. We're going to start with a couple of quick introductions. My name is Cathy Liska. I'm with the Center for Coaching Certification and also Coach 123, and I'm an MCC coach. Pan.
Hi, I'm Pandora Ray. I'm also with the Center for Coaching Certification and Coach 123, and I am a certified coach as well.
Awesome. Jessie, our special guest, our guest of honor. Tell everybody about you.
Well, thanks for having me, Cathy and Pan. It's so great to be with you both as my fellow coaches. I'm a coach. I'm a certified master coach from the CCC program, and I'm also a trauma-informed coach, and I also call my work transformational. So I'm working with all kinds of folks. I was a speech language pathologist for 35 years, and now I'm working with parents, teachers, and anyone who wants to understand their story and change their outcomes for the future.
That's awesome. So, Jessie, what does it mean to be trauma informed?
Great question, Cathy. Being trauma informed means, and you can Google it now and there's lots of information about it, but in my experience, being trauma informed means understanding your own experiences and how they impacted your development and your life, and mostly your relationships. So it's a personal experience. It's not something outside of you. It's becoming trauma informed about yourself so that you see the world in a way that you are more compassionate and understanding of other people's behavior.
And little do I know about this, but it seems like a new concept, a burgeoning concept. Can you say more about how this has come to be and why it's an important topic?
Yeah, I think everyone's having their own experience with it right now. My experience was that I started about 15 years ago, learning about things like the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study and the impact of neurodevelopment on children's behavior. Went to a few workshops, the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. It all came together after I worked with so many kids, and I kind of was questioning, why are they not talking? Why are they having so many challenges communicating with their families? What's going on for these parents? So, for me, that was my experience. Now that we've had enough stress in our lives between COVID, mass shootings, I think technology maybe has brought all of this to the surface, that people are experiencing a lot of stress. The neurodevelopmental research, the neuroplasticity research, people want to understand the nervous system and how that's impacting life. People are not getting the results they want from medication, right? They might get medicated and they might go, well, I still don't feel really good and I want to feel better. Relationships are challenged, and the research is just coming out. There's certain people like Dr. Bruce Perry, who's doing work on this neurodevelopmental process that shows that trauma happens in relationships and it heals in relationships. So if you're having an issue, it's probably in relationship to someone or something. And that comes from your prior experiences. We're just a culmination of where we've been and what we've done and what's happened to us. Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah wrote a book called What Happened to You? That's a great place to kind of start to think about it as a person, like, okay, it's time for me to get trauma informed.
So just off the shooting from the hip, what is trauma?
Oh, great. Okay, thanks for that shooting from the hip lead. Trauma is something that happens to you where you lose your sense of power, right? You become a victim. Depending on when it happens, it has different impacts. So if you're a child and you're left to lie in your crib and you're not picked up when you need to be comforted, That's trauma. That's an adverse childhood experience that impacts your nervous system and your sense of who you are in the world. It starts in the womb. You know, if a parent is super stressed out and they're carrying a baby, that baby feels that. Their nervous system is developing. So we're extremely sensitive human beings, right? So we feel everything. We see things, we hear things, right? And then we develop our mental capacity to talk to ourselves. And how do we do that, right? So as a coach, you know, you hear people talk and you can hear how they're talking about themselves, about others. It gives you a little bit of a window on where they're coming from. So trauma can be even, there's little t and big T. So little t is things that happen in very subtly, like a parent saying, "You're so stupid. You shouldn't do that," right? It could be saying that a lot to kids, and the kids just go, they don't say anything. They just kind of take it in. Eventually that becomes their voice. It could be as big as being smacked by your parent, either privately where you have no power, or in public, right? Then there's shame. So there's lots of ways trauma can happen.
So it sounds like there's a mixture here of neglect or victimization or abuse or
right. And we're learning about this. This is such, you know, like you said, shooting from the hip, the adverse childhood experiences study, which I can share at some point if people want it, started like in the late 90s. And that was just connecting the fact that people who had challenges with obesity actually all had significant adverse childhood experiences when they did a survey. Okay, so if you have a client who's struggling with weight loss, this is where it comes from. So that emotional need to eat, because it comforts someone, doesn't go away unless you get to the emotional problem, which is often sexual abuse.
So it sounds like there's another flip side of this too. It's beyond just childhood experience, because it seems as though lots of people as adults or even teenagers are experiencing trauma related to political climate, economic climate, violence, social equity, injustice, that sort of thing. How do you tie those together?
Well, you know, I call it now not just a trauma-informed experience, it's a human experience. So if we as human beings start to look at our lives through this lens, we can see that we are encountering lots of experiences every single day. Case in point, I stopped watching the news years ago because it was not serving my brain to be triggered by all the violence that I was seeing, because I had my own trauma and I was a wreck anyway. I didn't need to see somebody in New York City being shot, right? Does that serve us? Not really. Our nervous systems are evolving, right? We're not primitive anymore. We're not hunters and gatherers anymore. We are these evolved humans with a lot of thinking capacity. And what happens with trauma is it takes us out of our thinking capacity and keeps us in our survival mode. So that's why we have shooters. Shooters have trauma. They're not just shooters. They have a significant amount of trauma. People who have suicide, who commit suicide, have significant trauma, right? Often our shooters commit suicide. We just had this experience in Maine where somebody killed their mother and father and their neighbors, right? And he just got out of prison, and he had a story that, you know, started in childhood. You know, if we unravel the story, we often see where things began. I have a colleague, Cindy Stanford, who started ACEs Matters. She's a Black woman who started this right when the George Floyd incident happened, because she said, Black lives matter, but ACEs matter, because George Floyd and Derek Chauvin both had a lot of ACEs, a lot of adverse childhood experiences. And when you put those two together, you get a lot of, I call it trauma drama.
So you've done a great job of educating me, informing me, you know, of what this is all about. How do I, as a coach, go about integrating that into my practice? You know, we've
Mm,
got therapy. No,
yeah,
how?
yeah, therapists, yeah. Well, I often will have a client come to me who has been working with a therapist and says, I have PTSD, or I have, I'm getting divorced. Being divorced usually results from some kind of adverse childhood experiences. I can tell you that my personal experiences, when you unravel the relationship piece, people have challenges with relationship because of their trauma and their adverse childhood experiences and their early relationship patterns. So that, we're just learning this. Therapists, you can go online now and you can learn from therapists without going to therapy, which is good and bad, right? Because a lot of people are putting things on the out on the internet. You need to be discerning, right? There's a lot of information, and so you can learn a lot of information. Coaching allows you to integrate that information into your life, right? So I might have somebody who's in therapy, exploring their past, doing the deep emotional work, trying to unpack that, what it felt like to be abused or neglected as a child, because it comes up, right? And we don't want to talk about it. There's a lot of shame attached to it. But in coaching, we help them move along despite their trauma. But we have to understand that they had some. And so if they get emotional and they say, I really want to go out on that date, but, I'm really scared, I'll just do something like, I got my hand on my heart right now with you. Feel that. And then we move along. It's okay. This is now, that was then. And if you feel like you really need to explore that with your therapist, go for it. But I'm right here with you to say, you can do this, you can try it. What do you want to try, right? Use all my coaching strategies to help them continue to move along. But we have to stay present with them. We can't push them. We have to connect with them. We have to attune with them, because when trauma happens, people get separated. There's a disconnect. And if we're disconnected, that's not healthy. That is in itself a trauma. Like we're sitting here connected. I feel it, right? We're paying attention to each other. We're listening to each other. If one of you are out looking out the window, I would notice that, because I know what it means to be connected. Unfortunately, for example, in our school system, 28 kids in a room, one teacher, right? Picture all those kids in the room sitting looking at that teacher. Are they all connected? Probably not. One of them might have not had breakfast. Right? We need connection. So as a coach, you provide connection. Very important. But your trauma may also be triggered by your client's content, if you will, right? Your client might talk about a relationship breaking up or their divorce, and you might be having your own divorce going on in the background, and you're like, oh God, you can just do this. I feel ya. And it's okay to say, I think it's okay to say, I know in coaching, we're not supposed to talk about ourselves, but yeah, divorce is hard. That's all you have to say. You don't have to get into your details, but we know, like they can go on Facebook and find somebody who's talking about their divorce and get validated that way, or you can do it for them. So I feel like we as humans have to stay connected. Connection is the cure for all the mental health challenges we are having right now.
Interesting. So if I want to start playing with kind of pulling some of these things together that you're saying, the first thing I'm hearing is chances are all of us have experienced some sort of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so the starting point for us as coaches is being aware of our own experiences and how that plays into who we are and how we show up. From there, it's moving into, as a coach, how can I now be aware that my client probably has also experienced trauma, and how does that play in for them? So the idea of trauma informed is both learning about self and noticing the story behind what's going on for the client.
Absolutely. When we coach, we often say, what do you want? Right, Kathy? You taught me that question so well. What do you really want? Right?
Yeah.
What's getting in the way? What's getting in the way is often related to that sense of self that has experienced trauma.
Yeah, and people probably aren't recognizing that.
It's often the blind spot. Exactly. We
Yeah.
don't, it's hard to see it.
I'm imagining other people like me feel like, okay, I'm probably inadequate in this area. I don't feel like I have enough expertise in all of this stuff. How do I get to a place where I can effectively serve people without it becoming the danger zone?
Great question. You can become aware of your own trauma. You
Mhm.
can be that change that you want to see in your clients. If we want to help our clients, we have to help ourselves. Now we've opened up a little bit of Pandora's box here, Pan, because this is saying to us, we have to do things differently as coaches, as teachers, as doctors, as politicians. This is becoming a new way of being. We can't ignore it anymore, right? It's showing up. I mean, schools are becoming trauma informed. So, if you know any therapist, ask them who's on their caseload. Teachers, right? I hear this all the time. I have so many teachers that are coming to me. Coaching, they're leaving the field. They want a coach that wants to help them figure out what they're going to do next. I experienced that personally. I went from being a speech therapist to becoming a coach because I knew I needed to help people in a different way. Our need to take care of people, right? Our social workers, we all are doing that from a sense of needing to be taken care of. What a beautiful thing. We're shifting the universe right now. We are helping people become more self-reliant and self-aware. And then they are able to show up in a healthy way and have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
I've been thinking here with the words that are being used here. Much of our approach to child rearing and all kinds of other relationship building is about just stop whining. Just get over it. Just buck up.
Yeah.
It's almost a denial of some of these things. It's really interesting here because for me, my answer to that is that coaching opens up apertures. It opens up a new perspective. It opens up, and to acknowledge them is really powerful rather than sublimating them, squishing them down like the food. The person who's struggling with some kind of other method of dealing with it. And so it's a way just to show up and be present. So thank you very much. It's sort of refreshing conversation, actually.
Oh, good. Well, and it is. And you know what? I use the word story a lot. We all have a story, every single one of us. And when I worked in schools, I had little children coming to me that had really challenging stories at age 5. And so I knew, right? This is what we see later on. These are our school shooters. I'm sorry, I just have to say that out loud. I know those students had challenges at home and at school. They bring them to school, they don't go away. And what I used to do is help them tell their story. And once they could hold on to their story and know who they were as a 5-year-old, some of them didn't know their brother's name or how old they were, right? So a sense of self without shame is what we need. Brene Brown talks about that all the time. We're getting that message. We're getting bombarded with this message. The other thing that people are using, social and emotional learning, social and emotional coaching. It's all part of this. It's recognizing that, when we were children, we were supposed to have a lot of emotions. And guess what? A lot of us were not allowed to do that. We were told to buck up. We were told, just keep going. Oh, really? You feel really sad? Okay, period. Right? There was no real validation. There was no mirroring of our emotions. All those things help us to become healthier in our relationship skills, right? As parents, parenting is the biggest learning opportunity we have in our lives. If we have that opportunity, or, children are our teachers. I tell people that all the time. We have to stop blaming the children, right? That's why I stopped doing the work I did. I felt we were telling the children that had disorders. Well, they didn't have disorders. They had experiences that made it hard for them to learn and to develop even, right? They didn't have a parent that talked to them, so they didn't learn how to talk very well. They got to school, they weren't keeping up. Here comes Jessie. Jessie loved to talk. We would sit and talk all the time, and they would start talking. It wasn't about the therapy, it was about the connection.
Interesting. So the pragmatic side of me wants to walk away, coaches, okay, how do I do this? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so what I'm thinking about, back to what I was saying earlier, if I tie in the competency of embodies a coaching mindset, part of it is that self-reflective practice. And that's what this is saying to me. Okay, what is the self-reflective practice? It's maybe journaling about our own experiences and that kind of thing, to start having that awareness. I'm imagining people getting on the internet and doing some research and that kind of thing. And then I start getting nervous. It's like, okay, at what point is self-directed not going to get you there?
Well, let me ask you a question, Cathy. Why do you think that's not the solution?
I don't know if it is or not. I'm wondering. It has me concerned because this is deep. This is seated stuff. We talk about in coaching, we don't do therapy. We're not trained in that area. And so if it goes into the trauma and the adverse experiences and that kind of thing, are we equipped to do those things ourselves? I'm guessing a lot of us just don't have the know-how or the training.
Well, and I don't think we're ever going to know how to heal other people if we don't do our own healing. However, that healing does not happen in isolation. And that's the key that I was trying to get at. We can go on the internet and talk to ourselves and loop and loop and loop. Oh, I have this problem. I have this problem. I believe I am. Well, you know what? If you don't have somebody mirroring you back and validating you and witnessing you, it's not the same. We heal in relationship. And we need healthy relationships. Like, we don't need that person that says, oh, you can't do that. You shouldn't be doing trauma-informed coaching. Like, yes, you can do it, but you need to feel confident when you do it. You shouldn't be out there doing trauma-informed coaching if you don't know what trauma-informed means, right? So get grounded, become confident, do your work, try to explore that. It might mean having trauma-informed coaching with a coach. So you can become, that's what I help my clients do, become trauma-informed. They learn about their own trauma, and then they can have conversations with others. I do this with my friends, they know they're complaining about this problem. And I'm like, so where did that come from? Right? Where do you think it came from? Let's, tell your story. And then with my clients, it's like, how many times do our clients just get on and start telling their story, right? So we listen, and then we help them tell a new story and continue the story in a way that serves their purpose and their goals instead of repeating the same story. So story is a big part of this work. Does that help? But it's telling story to others, not by yourself, because you need perspective, right? We all need perspective. That's why therapy is great. somebody listening to you. I can tell you that in my experience in therapy, which has really empowered me to do this work as a coach as well, like I've had both pieces come together. I was told I had a present parent while I was being in therapy. Like the biggest thing that a lot of us haven't had is that present person in our early childhood and younger years that would really listen to us, so we could reflect back and think about how we're feeling and feel safe. So there's 7 trauma-informed principles, and I'd be happy to just kind of list them for you.
Yeah, that'll be
You can
great.
see, like, these are the things that you learn about when you're trauma-informed. Let me just pull them up for you. So one is safety. Okay. The other one, another one is regulation of the nervous system. Connected relationships. Cohesive narrative. Social and emotional resilience. Power with strategies. And I think coaching does that beautifully, right? We support our clients to do what they want to do and grow. And then the 7th one is healing and growing. So going beyond, right, where you are now and knowing that you're actually healing, meaning becoming more whole, becoming more self-aware, becoming more of who you really are. And oftentimes we see people with health issues, physical and mental health issues, as a result of their adverse childhood experiences and trauma. So we can't just treat or coach, they often want to work on physical, emotional, social, right, mental challenges.
Yeah. And the question that keeps running through my mind is this balancing of, okay, where is it therapy? Where is it coaching? How do we support them? How do we ensure, back to the safe place, that therapy is there when it's appropriate, coaching is safe, meaning we're not going into therapy with a coach that's not trained to be a therapist, kind of thing. That whole
really
balancing.
Important.
Yeah.
And I will be really clear in the beginning of my intake that I am not a therapist, that many of my clients will come to me and say they already have a therapist. I will ask them if they have a therapist. I will ask them if they have thought about having a therapist. And if we get to a point, and I will tell them that if we have a point where they're starting to talk about their trauma and I don't feel comfortable holding that space for them, I will tell them that that's something they can work with a therapist on, and we'll kind of put that in the therapy box. And that's my job, right? Is to I make sure that's really clear. And if it becomes an issue, and in my first session with them, and I'll say, you know what, it sounds like you might need to do some therapy right now. That might be the best first step for you. We can come back to coaching after you kind of figure out what's happening. Because if they're super emotional, some people get flooded when they find out their trauma. They might need therapy. They might need somebody who can do that kind of work with them. But if they're already aware of that and they just want to work on their relationships or their job or their, I'm ready.
Okay.
So all work in progress.
Yeah.
That's my message. We're not done. We're never going to be done. We could have trauma tomorrow. We can't pretend like we have to fix, we have to know everything. We can't. We have to be vulnerable as humans, right?
I'm left with this parting thinking right now, and it relates to affirmation stories. We tell ourselves stories about ourselves, and in a coaching situation, you can say, how true is that story? Well, it's not really true. I'd never failed. But to switch that from where you are now and what you believe is the truth of your story to what is it that you want your story to be? Right. And then work on that sort of futuristic piece is what is soothing to me and comforting to me and distinguishing between the therapeutic relationship and the coaching relationship.
And I think as coaches, and for me, the neurolinguistic programming that we've learned about, like, is so powerful. Because if you hear, like, for example, a parent will say to me, well, they're going to come home from school and they're going to want to do this, and I don't know how I should do this. You know, they'll be like predicting what's going to happen in the future. And I'll just say, is that true? Do we know if that's true? Right? Like you just said, Pan. And what do you want them to do? And can we write that story? Let's write that story today and see what happens when they come home. And it is magical.
For all ages, whether
It's
you're a child,
all ages, absolutely. And self.
Yeah.
There we go. Because we as coaches do this too, right? Oh, my client's going to get on and they're going to talk about the same thing. And, you know, I want to really help them. And right. No, we've got to be careful. We've got to be informed about our use of story. Love that question. That's a great one.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I was writing down these 7 pieces that you wrote for the trauma-informed coaching, and then I'm tying that into a lot of what we talk about in coach training, in our competencies, et cetera. So safety, I'm thinking, yeah, we all talk about creating that safe place where people can be open and transparent. And the caveat to it, okay, if it's all about the exploration of the past and the problem, that's therapy. If it's, okay, let me inform you on this, take a few minutes to give you, you know, the story to bring it to where I am now so that we can talk about where to go forward. There is some space for that. We just got to manage how much for that. You talked about regulation of the nervous system. I think about also emotional intelligence, knowing our feelings are okay. It's absolutely okay to have whatever feelings we have. What are we going to do with them?
Can I just say too, that it's also about like, what part of the brain are we in when we're regulating? Like, we have to be able to be in the frontal lobe and thinking and problem solving. Otherwise, we're not learning. So as coaches, I believe we can't support our clients unless they are in that part of the brain and regulated. And so being able to talk about how they feel helps people to get regulated. Does that make sense? And safety is about not, you know, I always want people to, you know, to understand, what does safety mean to you? Because safety to one person could mean I'm in my car and I'm not, you know, I'm getting away from people that are really bothering me, right? That could be a safe place for somebody versus, so there's psychological safety, and now there's physical safety from, you know, like teachers and kids in schools. They don't feel safe. Their systems are not regulated because they're worried about that alarm going off, right? That's a physical safety. But then there's psychological safety, when people are afraid they can't talk about what they want to talk about. So just helping people see what safety really means now. It's not the same as we used to think it was.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Okay. So, and I know we're going to move to wrap up. So the safety, the regulation of the nervous system, the connected relationships, which of course is a big part of what we're there with as coach, the cohesive narrative. I go to that affirmation story, Pam, that you're talking about, the social and emotional strategies, helping them explore where and how they want to be and go. And then that healing and growing that comes through that process.
Yeah.
So, Jessie, what's the overall message you want to wrap up with?
It's all
My computer glitched for a second. Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. So what's the overall message you want to share and close with?
Great. Well, my mantra, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to help your client, if your client appears to you and they want to work on relationship with their spouse or their friends or their colleagues, check in with yourself and make sure that your relationships are healthy. so that you're coming from that place of safety. Because otherwise, we're kind of projecting out this energy, if you will, that's not in alignment with what they want. We say in the coaching field, and we coach who we need to coach, right? We coach what we need to learn. It's real and it's okay. And that's the human vulnerability of our work, is that we are connected. We're having this conversation for a reason. It's not like we're just randomly going, oh, let's talk about trauma-informed work. I'm helping you guys to learn something. I'm learning about how my work is more connected to the people that I work with, where it's all connected. So be the change. If you're coming to me and you want to work on, parent coaching is a great example. My parents come to me and they say, oh, I want my kids to behave. I want them to sit down and have dinner with me. Well, guess what? Most of them are not sitting down and having dinner with their kids. They're running around, cooking, doing in their phones, doing things that they think they have to do. So that self-awareness is where we go. So we can support that by supporting them, but we have to be doing that work all the time. Keep being coached. Get some trauma-informed coaching. Get comfortable with it. It's where we're going. It's our human journey.
No.
And
Be
it's
the
so
change
helpful.
you want to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. So everyone, to let you know, you can find Jessie on her website. I'm going to spell her name for you. It's JESSIEGRAHAM coach.com. So www.jessiegrahamcoach.com. You can visit her there, you can find her there and connect and learn more and access the different resources, etc. In the meantime, Jessie, thank you so much for coming in and sharing this insight and your wisdom on this topic. It's been a wonderful conversation.
I'm grateful, Cathy, for you and Pan and the work you're doing as coaches, because coaching has provided me with a space to do this work. And it has been a significant part of my healing journey. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.